one of the cards that stood out to me from ARH8 is the Night Troopers. It's a really great supporting card, pun intended, for a lot of archetypes. And you all know me, I like to roll guns, play thematic decks, have subtypes that match, and have a lot of fun with that, and I feel that this card is right up that alley. A huge shout out to our channel members for supporting what we do here. If you want to get involved with the channel and the Dice Commando community, please consider joining as a channel member. Remember, these videos are only possible with your support. You can show that support with a like, a subscribe, and by leaving us a comment and sharing your feedback. Community first, and go Commando. Hey folks, just before we get started, kind of a fun nuance of this. I went with the Clone Troopers. I wanted to make a Night Troopers background. I couldn't find a good image that I was happy with. So I went with the Clone Troopers because I was like, well, maybe one of them was an old Stormtrooper at that point and potentially became a Night Trooper. I don't know. Probably not in terms of timeline because I know the clones actually aged faster, so I don't think they would have made it. But you never know. Maybe we have clone zombies. Zombie clones? Clone zombie clones? Clone zombie clones. Hey there, my ARH Destiny friends. Welcome back to Dice Commando and the Commando cast. That's right, your source for Star Wars Destiny Friday. And happy Friday and welcome. So, over the next couple weeks, I'm going to be doing some focus in episodes on specific cards out of ARH8, doing some build rounds and discussions. And the one I wanted to start with is the Night Trooper. I really love this card. So what we're going to do is we're going to look at the card itself. Some pretty obvious synergies. You all know me. I like stuff to be obvious. And then we're going to kind of go through the troopers and talk about some potential deck builds. So let's get started. This card, 2-drop support, right? So this 2-drop support has just its die alone, a 1 gun, a 2 gun, a 2 indirect, a disrupt, a resource, and a blank. That's a pretty good die. It's basically, in terms of value, a Clone Trooper die, right? The Clone Trooper die actually is not quite as good, but it's pretty good, right? Okay, so you're working off that of a value for a 2-drop support. That is, supports are their own thing in their own way. They don't roll in the same, obviously, in terms of like a value advantage, but they also stick around. They effectively have redeploy. But if you're treating this in like a non-support deck or like a non-big boy, you really lose the action to gain the redeploy, but a lot of things in the grand scheme of things have redeploy these days. So playing a card like this over if you were to look at a weapon, a lot of weapons have a very similar value type die. So what you're really asking yourself is, what does this support get me over running a weapon? And I think that's a very fair question, especially in, this is obviously a trooper synergy card. A lot of times with your troopers or your trooper type characters, you want to put guns on them and the guns will have redeploy. So why play this card? Well, after a trooper character you control is defeated, this support gains 1 of that character's character dice. That is super cool. Very interesting, and it really feeds itself into a specific type of archetype where it facilitates you letting your big die. Letting your big go down because you want the die of the die. When they die, you get the die. That's what I'm trying to say, right? Or what I was not trying to say, either way. But I find this very interesting because a lot of times in trooper decks, or I should say trooper-based decks or something like that, what you're really looking at is some way to maximize the value of the redeploys, get in multiple dice, and then you obviously have the triggered removal and removal that triggers off of having troopers and synergy like that. You often don't see something like this, a 2-drop support, in like a big little deck, right? Usually you tend to be upgrade based, right? Kind of my point. So again, why run this? Because it saves the die. What freaking value, absolute freaking value off of this do you have if you're essentially double dipping off of your big's die when they go down? The value of there is really tough. I didn't do the math, but it's really tough to value that because obviously it flexes by the character. But the value of turning a character die of sorts into a redeploy in its little way is pretty high. Okay, so let's go ahead and pull up then Enoch, right? So Enoch, Captain of the Guard, is obviously the kind of the build around pairing here because he's kind of doing the same thing. So a 9/12 with 10 health pretty good in his own right with 2 gun, 3 indirect for 1, a single focus, a disrupt, and the special. After one of your effects defeats an opponent's character, this character may gain 1 of its character dice. So you combine Enoch and the Night Troopers, and again, obvious build around, but you combine those 2 together and you have a very interesting redeploy die value cascade. I think value cascade is the right way to say that, because you can kind of just keep kicking your same dice down the line for the whole table. So I really, really like this. Now, his special, gain 1 resource. Okay, so it's a resource, or roll a die on a red upgrade, or support you control with cost 3 or less into your pool. All right, so you see the obvious synergy there. We're not cracking any eggs with that. It's, again, it kind of builds itself. But now let's really put that into context of what this means to building. Okay, so this, after one of your effects defeats an opponent's character, you get the character die. Okay, after a trooper character you control is defeated, this support gains 1 of that character's character dice. So because Enoch gains that character die and it becomes Enoch's die, you could in theory move their die too. So you've got the Night Troopers, which protect your big's die, and then you have Enoch, who is a little that they are motivated to kill first, which granted devalues the Night Troopers, I guess, in theory, if they're going after your big first. But it also means you have your big on the table more, and then you have Enoch's die to get use out of, right, on the Night Troopers. So that's really good. That's like really good. So in that vein, though, if we're thinking about who do we want to play on the big little plan, what we, inherently want to do is make sure that we're playing as many troopers as possible, right? In this case, with Night Troopers, and to be clear, Night Troopers are in your deck. You still have to draw them, you still have to put them on the table, but all you have to do with your 2 resources, you get 2 resources a turn, you can drop them there, you can drop them out without getting, unless you're disrupt or something like that. But let's go ahead and go over to the ARH deck builder. Oop, looks like I gotta, see, I was trying to be slick, but I gotta go hide the Night Troopers. Sorry about that. So we can do that. All right, there we go. Now you should be able to see it. Okay, so if we go over and we look at the potential characters that are available under this, we have the Incinerator Trooper. That's actually not a bad die, right? 2 indirect, 2 indirect, 3 indirect. Okay, so I guess you could do like a 4 white Incinerator. We've got OG Phasma. Die's not actually great anymore, right? It's fine. It's not great anymore. One I'm interested in with the 2 focus, especially with, thinking about the concept of having pretty quality die that stay around, that 2 focus on Iden Versio is actually interesting. Okay. We then have Death Watch Mando. I don't think this die is worth it, right? I think you'll take it if you can, but I don't think this is worth doing. Now, there is an interesting point to be made here about like Enoch at 9 points and the Mandos at 8 points. You also have that point with the Incinerators and Enoch. That's a lot of health, a lot of just chip damage. Very interesting. We have the Faust, but we have the Snow Trooper. But then we get down into stuff that I find interesting, which is Crosshair. Okay, we talked a fair. So Crosshair, to be fair, to my knowledge, never really made too much of a mark in the last set's meta. We did do a whole episode about Crosshair back then. I find him very interesting. Because just look at that die. Like, that die itself is a pretty good die. Now, one caveat about having the indirect, and that's something worries me about Enoch as well, having that indirect on there is as you're increasing the number of die that have indirects, and then you're also, right, because the concept is you lose the character, so now you have less health pool available. You start effectively kind of running out of space to put those. So taking in, a 2 discard for 1 indirect is pretty good value because 1 indirect and you can choose where to put it. But when you're down to 1 character, that indirect is not indirect. So the value changes there. So that is something just to keep in mind, right? So Linus here with the 1 focus, 2 focus, maybe he is a 10-14, or sorry, 10-13. That's something to think about. But now let's go talk, I'm shocked that Moff Gideon, by the way, is a trooper, but this is a phenomenal, phenomenal option with the 2 gun, 2 melee, 2 discard, 2 shield, and 2 resource. Now, the resilience on himself is fine. But think about that die rolling in with a Night Trooper. And then I want to add, of course, right, if you're able to get 2 Night Troopers down, they could each take 1. Okay, now it's 2 actions, slows you down a little bit to roll it in. But again, that's pretty good. That's pretty good. Okay, now the Senate Guard has no die. So I thought that was funny. But I actually don't hate the Incinerator Trooper. With only 7 health, deals 1 damage to each character you control when they go down. So, right, because you're also trying to play it wide. So I don't think you play Incinerator Trooper. Okay, but looking at, again, like Crosshair, it's pretty good. Moff Gideon works out exactly with Enoch, like perfectly with Enoch. And it's, kind of funny. I don't think they're even in the same literal universe. Well, universe they were. I don't think they're in the same galaxy. But interesting. So I'll go ahead and shut that down. And I guess that's about my piece. But Enoch Gideon looks pretty strong to me. Enoch Gideon looks pretty strong. Now, you obviously have, other things that you can pair with, but they're not, right? I mean, if you're going to do the Night Trooper plan that I'm talking about, you really want, I think, to use Enoch plus a big, and I think that lends itself to Gideon. I think that's the best choice. There are other things out there. Again, you could even try and go 3 wide. It gives you more time with which to get value out of the Night Troopers and double dip out of the die. Completely fair, right? Maybe Crosshair fits into that plan, but I think you're playing Enoch. I think that's definitely what you're doing. Go ahead and throw up Enoch again, because why not? But I think you're doing Enoch, and then you figure out how the math works on that. And even though the Incinerator Trooper is a good die, I don't think if you're going wide, you want to do that. But maybe. So anyway, that's my thoughts. Let me know, folks, what you were thinking below. Nothing else. Thanks so much for joining here on your Destiny Friday. And go Commando.